Welcome back to another episode of the Campfire Series podcast. I'm your host, Logan Soforenko. This week's theater episode is with Cody Jenkins, who portrays the character Mark in Rent, the Broadway musical. He tells us a little bit about his journey and from going to city and also country to country. He's done the show in other countries. How cool is that? We hope you enjoy our interview. And also, he has a weird hobby he wants to share about. Let's
Awesome.
get to it.
Well, my name is Cody Jenkins. I am from Fort Worth, Texas, born and raised, and went to college at Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas, and got my BFA in acting. Took a few years off, I guess, of like really trying to hit the road and was trying to save some money. And then in 2018, 2018, at the beginning of the year, I joined Norwegian Cruise Lines as a lead production singer for a 6-month contract, and did that aboard the Norwegian Sky and traveled through kind of like the Bahamas area, just a very short little trip, 3 and 4 day cruises. Once I got off of that, I had some downtime, not much, but a little bit, and then booked a original work that had its world premiere in Wilton Manors, Florida. It was called Now and Then. So I got to play some guitar for the first time on stage in a role, and that was fun. Besides it just being like, a stand-up or, open mic night, type of thing. So that was fun. I got to originate a role. That was a lot of fun to put that on my, resume. And at the end of that, I saw that there were auditions for the national tour of Rent. And that was about September of 2018. And so in October, I got back to the city, and about 2 weeks later, there were Rent auditions. So I was actually going in as a replacement for the current tour that was going on. And I ended up booking that, which was my dream, to get on that show. Also, to be on a national tour was flooring to me because I hadn't quite hit that yet. And it all came in 1 year. Very quickly, all these things came. So 2018 was a huge year for me, and that was the late takeoff, I guess, for my career. So I joined Rent as Gordon, understudying Roger, and that started. I guess it was my contract. I guess was end of November, right? Basically December. I went in for Tech Week, and then we went to the holidays, and then right as we came back, it was full fledged. I did that until July. And throughout that tour, I also re-auditioned for the next year's tour, and was really fortunate to be asked to be Mark. So again, I was very floored as well. So taking a lead role in a national tour and a show that I adore and love so much, and always have. So it's changed my life, and I got to then, really get in it like any artist would love to do, when they kind of come across a piece of work like that they love and feel that way about. So then I took the tour from, I guess we were in rehearsals July and August, and we went out in August, and this was of 2019 now, and performing. So then I got through to 2020 in March, and then COVID struck. And so that was where performing has stopped at this point. But yeah, I've done a lot of straight plays and stuff when I was in school. A lot of studying, just like basically, yeah, just playwrights. And I had a lot of like musical theater background going into college, from my community theater and the program that I grew up learning in. It was very like performer driven. So you kind of did it all. But I enjoyed having that background in acting because it definitely suits me. It suited me very well. And I enjoy the full depth of studying the craft of acting. So anyways, that was kind of my like quick synopsis of how I got to where I am now, essentially. And now I'm just back home in Fort Worth and not performing, obviously, unfortunately, but hopefully soon. So Rent was the last thing that I did, like the last show I was in.
I like that terminology. It's a quick little synopsis about just like we Google Cody Jenkins and we see, pop up big synopsis of, the journey to Rent. But just hearing you talk for those couple minutes, I can just like tell you have Mark in you. And when it came to my city, came to the Pantages in July of 2019, I believe I saw Logan do Mark. Uh,
Yes.
and so I unfortunately didn't get to see you as Mark, which I kind of want to see that now. But
Yeah.
walk me through a little bit about the differences just in the years that the first year not playing Mark, and then playing Mark. Obviously, you're still doing it 8 times a week, but what differences did you make, and what things stayed the same?
Oh, that's a good question. Wow. I mean, there was the work ethic didn't change for sure. Uh, and I'm not just saying that to be like, cover my bases. It was the work ethic of trying to be constantly ready at the drop of a hat to go on as Roger, but then to make sure that you're still every day ready to do your main job. So having two tracks kind of always playing throughout, kind of going through you a little bit, like through your mind. And when you're not on, when I wasn't on stage for Gordon, I was still trying to mentally track Roger stuff, or I maybe go backstage and try to like sing along with him, or just little things that like the work ethic stuff. For Mark, uh, it was the same thing, just in a different way. The work ethic was just a having to constantly make sure that I paid attention to um, my rhythm, I guess, my what is it? My routine. And my routine's not big and it's not crazy. It's just it's just a simple process of, all right, pull yourself away from reality, come into the world that you're gonna about to be in, relieve my stresses and free my mind, and then warm up the voice and warm up the body, and then start to dig into the character and then just let it flow into the show and those processes. But for the work ethic for Mark was a constant, just being ever present in every moment, because you can never let up in that role. You have to be so in the show because it just kind of demands it, I think. And it demands, so like his demand is different, I felt, than Roger's demand, in a way that the characters kind of are. Mark's journey is very integrated and Roger's isn't. His is very, solo, like him and Mimi pretty much, and Mark. And he kind of branches out to people, but he's very driven to writing his song. So in those ways of like the artistic way of that work ethic stayed the same, but Roger's role was a little more difficult for me vocally. Uh, just he just gets a little higher than Mark does. It's still tough track to sing, or it's still tough music to sing. It's a very, it's that like a rock opera. So you're never really letting up. You're constantly using the voice. So now where and that'll lead me into what really changed for me, though, uh, progressively, I would say, since I started, because I had learned a lot about myself, a lot about how to take care of myself. I never done 8 shows a week like that, and on the road, nonetheless. So a lot of learning went in my first, you know, 8 months, really, and even while I was playing Mark, because the roles were changing, my demands were changing. I had to kind of alter my work ethic a little bit to suit the role and to suit myself and how I was growing inside of that. So when it came down to the, you know, absorbing Mark, it was like I kind of had the show in my back pocket a little bit. I knew what was there. And it really helped me knowing Gordon and Roger's track. Because as Mark, I knew where Roger was. Like as the actor, I knew where he was going. I knew what he was doing. I put myself, my mind in his shoes. That also helped me connect to that, to my best friend as Mark, because I had my own take of it, which I didn't hold on to. I was acting and reacting to Coleman, my Roger, but it gave me an idea of kind of where his was coming from. So there were a lot of things that changed because of Mark's presence in the show, um, and because of how much demand there was. My first year, um, I was going I was going out a lot during the day and like exploring a lot of the city. I love to disc golf, so I took a couple of discs with me on the road and would try to find local courses, and then I'd Uber out to them if they weren't, terribly far away and super expensive, and try to get out there early and play and do some stuff and work out. well, when I got into doing Mark, it was so demanding that like I was not going to the gym very much. I never disc golfed on tour. I had to force myself to get out and explore more, but I was just worried because I needed so much of my energy. I needed every drop of energy for that role, and what it demanded. So a lot of my learning in that was as my body, my voice, my body, my mind, everything started to adapt to this routine, and especially the role. I was just learning a lot about that. And so a lot of my focus came into maintaining myself and, you know, maintaining the show really, because it's just being so much involved. I was like, I have a big part. I got to maintain it. And I was so hyped on my energy for the show that changed a little bit. Like my, I guess, personal life on tour changed.
You mentioned freeing your mind. We'll talk about that a little further on because it's a heavy show. And
Hmm.
personally, I don't want to get personal, but 2 years ago when I fell in love with Rent, my mom's a huge theater fan. She loves Rent. Rent's her favorite show. And one of the hardest years in high school for me mentally was when was happening, but I also saw Rent, and it just made it made things even more real, and you opened your eyes a little bit to how great companionship is, and also how loss is just so sad. Obviously with Angel, and how Roger's trying to write that song. But with that being said, that year I saw Rent on Fox. I saw it live there, and then I saw the tour twice, and I saw the
Yeah.
movie like 3 times that year. That was the year of Rent. And with that being said, you mentioned going to do just emptying your mind throughout the day doing the disc golf and all that stuff. I remember in high
Definitely.
school. I remember in high school, back when I was in just like ensemble parts, I had my Xbox, my TV backstage. Then all of a sudden, I played Nick Bottom in Something Rotten. I'm like, oh crap, I don't have time to do this because you need all that energy, like you said. But tailing
Yeah.
back to what you talked about, for like freeing the mind and a little bit about the show itself, when you were actually cast in the show. Obviously, Jonathan Larson, when he wrote this show, he never saw what it was, and it's a really heavy show. And I didn't let my she's now because she's 12 years old, but I didn't let my little sister watch that show because she'll be asking a lot of questions, but those are the questions that need to be answered. So, what was
Right.
the material of the show like for you? I know it's the I'll cover you reprise, the one that always got me whenever I saw that show. That's the one where everyone's
Oh
standing
yeah.
in line, and that's just that was the one. But with that being said, tell me a little bit about that and how you don't let that affect your personal life, or it doesn't like get you sad and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. Um, well, I was introduced to Rent like, oh my goodness, in high school, probably, maybe middle school, but like eighth grade, uh, seventh or eighth grade. But there were things about it I didn't understand when I was that young. I thought I understood it all, but when I was able to be cast in the show, I learned a lot about the show. I learned a lot about these like characters and the life being built. Like it just really came to life. And I also credit our team. I credit Evan and Trey and Marlise and Tim and everybody that was has worked on this show for so long, and everybody that has put time and energy into getting the show to where it is now. Uh, I learned a lot about the show being cast the first time. Being cast the second time, I learned even more about the show, which is funny. But when you talk about like the mind and about the content matter and the dark parts of the show, um, one thing about this show, it's what you said, and it's I like that you said it because you have this experience that you'll understand this. So when you saw Rent, the time in your life, it was very impactful because you said it made everything seem just very real, that it wasn't fake. You weren't the only one going through it or feeling it. Um, Other people can have it worse than you. All those things. A lot of things should probably go through your head. Well, when I saw Rent, I saw it with I saw in the revival tour with Adam and Anthony, uh, and I got to meet them at the stage door and had a whole fun thing with them. But my point about that was that at that point in my life, seeing that show, I saw it with my best friend, and it changed my life again. So I'd seen the film, but that was the time that I saw it on stage. And when I saw it on stage, it did something to me because I think the show lives differently on the stage. And um, so I had that experience with the show, and that changed me. And then I've always enjoyed the show, but when I got to get into it and really dive into it, I had that was when I realized the depth truly of because I you have to give yourself over to it, and not just as like the audience member, but truthfully, like you're having to put yourself to live through that. And it got there are a lot of times where it would get really difficult. There just loss in general is really hard. I've had a lot of terrible loss. Uh, I had terrible loss really young. My mom passed away from cancer when I was 15. And so I knew that pain, but like did not process it very well. And it took me a very long time to do that. But the thing with Rent is that what's so beautiful about the show, and what's so beautiful about it is that it has immense power to be simple, like be stripped down, like in the set, just be simple, be people rocking out, being who they are. It's very pedestrian. It's very like, it's not a spectacle. It has the power to just like totally alter you. I've felt it. I've had people tell me that they felt it. And what it did for me was opened up a lot of doors to my life every day. And one of the biggest things is measure your life in love. And that like saying is just like if you carry that with everything you do, how much love am I giving to this? Like how much love I'm how much love did I give today? Or I not give enough or whatever for your just does a lot towards it changes you as a person. It because what it does is it starts to like really open up the parallels to life that they might be talking about um, AIDS and having like serious drug addiction and maybe not having parents they can call on any family, like they're literally just relying on their friends. I mean, so many times I had to feel that. I was I became homeless in college randomly. Boom. And I had to rely on three of my buddies to let me sleep on their couch for a few months so I could figure out what was going on. If I didn't have my friends there, I mean, that's what I needed. I needed friends. And that was a really kind of rough time. But, you know, it Rent is a show that is timeless because of that. Because the stories, the all the things that what is it? All of the little messages that Rent has are about life. It's about dealing and coping with life together, loving each other because you have to love each other. Because if you don't measure your life in a lot of love, it's hard to be happy with all the dark things going on. People dying all around you for, I mean, we're experiencing this now. Like it's very real now in a different way, but we are. So it's how do we cope? Like Rent is very much about that. It's like against the grain of things that are just rubbing you the wrong way, but how do you still make it through that when your best friends are dying and they're sick and losing their everything and things just feel like at a total loss? Where is it that you can find love and joy and empowerment and motivation to stay alive, to for like Roger's ex killed herself. What makes it to where he wouldn't want to? I mean, that is dark. And it's a lot. So when you just sit with that for a moment, the reality of that, it becomes very heavy. But that is a reality that is can be right next door to you. It can be down the street from you. That can be happening to somebody. And you see that person down the street and it makes you think, I don't need to judge them. I need to love them because that's some pain they're going through. Because tomorrow you can be feeling that same pain or worse. And what I think is on the alternative. Sorry, I've kind of delved into this a lot, but I'm thinking more in the mind is is how the show gets you to kind of parallel to life, where you have to be careful to keep yourself from getting too far into that stuff and let the negatives from that come back to your life. That's where you lean on the people. That's where honestly we lean on cast, where we lean on the people who like really are there and understanding and are listening to us and know what you're going through. When there are a lot of times like little things happen backstage, little like Angel will be there to hug Mimi after she runs off crying at the end of the Roger and Mark Roger fight. And Roger runs away and she comes in and she's like, I just came to say goodbye, love. Hello, disease. She's realizing, oh my God, I'm dying. I'm not coming back from this. I'm probably going to die. And she panics. And when she runs off, like the reality and the severity of living that, it's hard. But when you run off stage and you have a friend there to like make a joke or to like love on you, that's a release. And the biggest thing is processing that emotion. And why I said earlier that like I had a hard time processing the loss of my mom was that this show, when I saw it live, in certain ways, started to tap at that and started to crack that shell around my heart that wasn't allowing myself to process it. And what did do it was I was there with someone I loved, experiencing something and having that support so that, when something, just like when she runs off stage, something bad happens, you have a friend to hug you and hold you. It's just like in life. If you feel that, man, this is getting me down and I'm getting down, it's like reach out. There's someone there. There's someone right there. And that is a big thing for me that I would love to have is like, like thinking about the show makes me emotional. Like at the end of the show, there's so much emotion and like so much energy. It's so exhausting. And I would run off sometimes and just cry. Oh, and you're just like, oh my God. And you just, and you have to like shake it out as it's so much going through you. But at the same time, you're like, hey, I'm me. I am me. I'm Cody. And I just told a beautiful story, but that's there. I'm here now. Let's go. And taking that time after the show to just bring yourself back. And what I like to do is just get into my room and I put on jams immediately. I put on music, like totally nothing musical, like nothing at all, like rock, so something that just gets me going. And then I just slowly tap back into my world. And it is a process. It's hard because you have to learn how you get through that. With talents and everything, everyone's got those talents, but it's very important that this is also a talent, is to take care of yourself through it. So Rent is one of the shows that will get at you the most. And it has for me, on a level that has struck me, like in rehearsal, I've had to have moments where I have to breathe. I'm like, wow, okay, I need a minute, guys. I need to take a second just to clear myself, release it, and not hold on to it. Because holding on to it's bad. But that also, for the work, teaches you, that's what's beautiful. The work teaches you that you have to do that. You have to be able to let it go. And just like it's going to teach you for your life, that when you come through it, you have to process it. It has to move through you. And when it does, then you can let go of it. And it's a beautiful lesson. And it's a good lesson that I learned through Rent, because it's something that's hard to do. It's really hard to do.
Well, honestly, I really appreciate you, sharing, all that stuff. And there's never, an expiration or a deadline to say this, but I'm sorry for, the pain you went through with losing your mom at such a young age. And also, this is the perfect show for not only a performer like you, but a person like you who is an ambassador of love, from what I can tell in the 20 plus minutes we've talked, ambassador for love and light. And, you're talking about a show where it took place during, it was an epidemic, but it was a big deal. And now we're talking about stuff now where, it's that loss. And, you said, first thing that came to mind when you said, when you get home after a deep show, you put on rock, there's this, this playlist, like the 70s and 80s playlist that Guardians of the
Yeah.
Galaxy movie has. I forget what the
Yes.
like the formal mixtape is called in the movie, but it's got a bunch of awesome rock stuff. Definitely recommend if you have not checked that out. But
Oh, I will. I definitely will now for sure. There's
when
probably some good gems in there.
oh, absolutely, Billy Joel, Brian Adams,
Oh yeah.
all the classics. But with that being said, kind of segueing into the more uplifting part of being a Broadway on tour performer, you get to go to some cities, and you said it. You like to sightsee. This was before you did Mark because you were able to give more energy. But with
Yeah.
that being said, I would assume it's not as hard to remember, but it might because we're almost at the time period in the pandemic where we're like, hey, remember this time last year in the pandemic? We're almost at a calendar year. So, what have
I
been
know.
what have been
Wild.
some cities that you've enjoyed performing in? Maybe for the actual scenery itself, or whether that be the theater as like the actual performance theater. I always get the
Yeah.
same response. I don't know if you guys have been to any of the Fox theaters, but that's been kind of a common theme for the tours.
Yeah. Yeah. The Fox theaters are gorgeous. They are. They're stunning. They're very like old and, antique like. You could tell from the dressing rooms, you see the writings on the wall, and it's cool to be in those theaters because you're a part of history. I loved performing in Philly. Um, Philly, the crowd was great. I loved exploring that city. I had a lot of fun when I was there. I was there on my first leg and my second leg. So I got to go back to the city, and it was great. So I was able to perform actually all three roles inside that theater, and it was wonderful. It was a great experience for me. I loved that. Um, I loved Hawaii, of course. I loved performing in Houston because it brought me back to Texas. My dad and my uncle got to come see me opening weekend. My best friend and his girlfriend and his brother. So lot of things that were good about coming back home. Um, I loved Boston. Boston was awesome. I had always been wanting to explore Boston and see it, just with so many, like movies, like Goodwill Hunting, and like, oh, there's just so much good movies of Boston in it. Anyway, and so I had a great time there. The audiences were wonderful. Um, and I'm trying to think about theaters. You really say it's been a long time. There were some gorgeous theaters up north. I know we went to up in like Illinois, Ohio. We went to some up in northern Wisconsin, and I can't remember where they were. It's been so long, and we went to so many places. Canada was a blast. I had a blast. We had a 6 week tour through Canada, and it was so much fun. We actually had like a week off, and I just stayed in Canada and got an Airbnb and explored Canada, and it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. I mean, never could I have really said that I'd probably go and do that again if it wasn't lending me to go do that. But it was a cool experience. It was super fun. Uh, and Hawaii was a blast. Where else? Where else? Oh, we had a wonderful trip to Florida. We had a nice little stint through Florida. Like we went to Key West, and we went to like Tampa, just south of Miami. That was a fun little trip. It was really nice weather. It was a lot of fun. So, man, been a lot of places. I've been to probably like 45 of the states now, something 42 maybe 42. But it's been a lot. Hawaii was incredible because that experience was unique in its own with the audience members. But also we got to perform December 24th, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. From here on in, I shoot without a script, and it was right there on stage. And honestly, what was crazy was coming out, setting up the camera. I do my turn. I breathe everybody in, and I turn out to the audience, and I couldn't even open my mouth, and they just started cheering. And I said, "We begin on Christmas Eve," and it exploded, exploded. The audience went wild, and I was kind of prepared for it, but not for how long they cheered. It was like we had already performed. It was like that was it. It was over. Like they were roaring. And so I pushed through the monologue, And about halfway through it, they finally quieted down. And so then we get back and we finished. I did the monologue. We get into Rent and we finished Rent. We are like, Rent, boom, and the punch on the floor and explosion again. And that is electric. Like I had never had that feeling on stage ever. I mean, we performed in some huge houses, like thousands of seats. But when you're in a theater that's just the right size, packed full of people who want to be there, it was electric. It was so cool. So that's that on top of just the people there, and how loving they were. We came off, excuse me, we came out of the stage door and just everybody getting laid, just bunch of lays. And I was like, oh, I just walked away with like 4 lays and a bunch of hugs and a lot of pictures. And that was fun. It was a blast, man. So, touring was wonderful. And there were many cities. There were a lot of small, like maybe 1 to 3 nighters that we had that I loved because I loved stopping off in small towns too, more than just the big cities. But those are the ones that stuck out to me the most because I was super, super excited. Um, like I also went to Chicago. That was a blast. Oh my gosh. Cincinnati, a lot of wonderful places. So
Well,
blast.
following your guys' tour, it seemed like you guys went to a lot of places. So I'm glad that you have uh, a lot that stuck out. But obviously Hawaii, so that just sounds so unique, and this is why you love national tours. They go to, like you said, they go to the places that aren't the big cities and that don't really have 4 or 5 theaters that have tours come in or have Broadway performances that are stationed there. And I this year I did it. Last year I didn't. I on December 24th, 9 p.m. Yada yada. That's 6 for me. So usually I'm in church on Christmas Eve and I miss it, and I'm like but at home this year, I'm like, I'm not missing it this year. And then I sit by the clock patiently, and then it's 6:01. I'm like, are you kidding me? I was so I was so mad, but I'm like, you know what? We can just round down because that's what they do in math. But
That's right.
exactly. Nevertheless, though, we did it. But what an experience that is for you. For some reason, the very first number in Rent, the thing that stuck out with me a lot every time I saw it was just the lighting, because it was like in sync with the music, and it was different in each production, and it was so cool. But Cody, thank you so much for coming on the show and just sharing your thoughts and experiences, and quite frankly, takes on the story that not many people have really thought about, and giving us ways where in times like these we can actually apply them, and hopefully we've been non-consciously applying them to this point, especially in this
Right.
crazy time of the nation that we're in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, it was my pleasure to get on. First of all, I love to talk about the show anytime and, love to be of help. For sure, this show will, if you keep this show with you and you just kind of stick with it, it will, it'll always teach you something. And I think naturally as humans, we have to be like very vigilant towards certain habits, whether there may be like mental health habits or even just like what you eat or your exercise or whatever your habits are. Exercising good healthy habits for you, it's in the same way that it can be something so small like what you're eating. Rent has shown me, and I hope that I could share that it is very true, about how you balance and how vigilant you are towards those things in your life and in your interpersonal life, excuse me, with other people and with yourself. And when you're focused on giving love to other people, never you don't overextend yourself, but with what you're doing, is it coming from a place of love? Because measure your life in love because of how quickly it can fall apart and fade away. And as we're seeing now, so now is a great time to implement these things. And as much as you also are loving other people, love yourself, because self-care right now is more important than it's ever been, and it is always of utmost importance. So definitely with that, Yes, it has been a blast, man. And thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's always wonderful to talk about the show and to talk with somebody who's, interested and asks cool questions and gets me thinking about it. And you got me literally emotionally back into the show just by doing this. So I also thank you.